Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Amazon Sumerian. Building an interactive city. Building a digital city is actually what I have on the topic for today. If you are new with us, what we've been doing is working on a city, assembling a city essentially. That I found using Turbo Squid. It's a model that was pre-made by somebody else. And we've been working on this city to kind of combine it together and build it and create a city in which we can start then dive a little bit deeper into the actual city and add some VR capability to be able to walk around, create different engagements. So to really create it like a digital virtual city. So that's the idea. If you've been watching for the last several streams in the last few weeks, though, we've been really working a lot on actually just creating the city and assembling things. And one of the big things I've learned is that I'm not very good at that. I'm not very good or fast at putting things together and assembling, and also just trying to envision, like, what does a city look at? I'm not a city planner. Big surprise. So one thing that I decided to do is, like, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Instead of spending so much time just assembling, is that the right word? A city. I'm just going to have a city kind of built in already assembled, and then we're going to start messing with some stuff and adding some capabilities to it. Because I was just honestly getting a little bit bored with trying to do that over and over and over again, and it just wasn't as fast as I'd hoped. So that's kind of a change in direction, and I hope that it's also a little bit more interesting in terms of the content that we can work on and the different capabilities and projects and things we can start messing around with. I'm going to switch. Well, I guess let me look at my screen here. So building a digital city day and night. Today, we're going to be looking at how do you make it so you can make it day and night using a timeline and also some state machines. So there's some things that, even though I know we say that this is unrehearsed, this is slightly rehearsed, but we're going to try to get into some other things that are unrehearsed and experiment around a little bit with this. But right now, how do you make it so that you have daylight and then it shifts into nighttime, and we actually get kind of the sun moving, kind of overhead and rotating around, so we can actually get that change. That's what we're going to be looking at today. To do that, we're going to be doing timelines and state machines, combining those two things together, and we'll see kind of how far we get with this. There's certainly some simple stuff we can do. We can start messing with it a little bit to see if we can get a little bit more involved. All right, I'm going to switch over to my screen here, and this is the city that we have. I'm going to zoom in on it. So it's the same models and everything that I had been working with, but we've already just kind of assembled this already. So that's the difference. So we can get on with some more cool, interesting stuff. So when you start zooming in here, again, we have these lights, I think, are a little too, seems very bright. Do I have an extra light on here? I might have an extra light. Let me see. Seems a little brighter than it should be. Okay, so we have several buildings, we have some streets, we have some roads, we have cars and all sorts of stuff. And I will be adding onto this. So this is just a small section. We're going to be adding a little bit more to it to make see how big we can actually get it. So that's the plan and the goal. But again, I want to make a shout out to the people that actually created this model. So if I go over to Turbo Squid, and this is the simple poly-urban low poly assets model found on Turbo Squid. So we did purchase this, and this is what we're working with. So as you can tell, this is very similar to what we just looked at in Sumerian. And yeah, that's that. One other thing, though, is that on Twitter, earlier this week, when we tweeted out about this saying, all right, we're going to be building this, somebody said, can you make zombies in here? And yes, we can add zombies, and I've already done that. I just quickly went over to Google Poly, and Google Poly is really cool because you can find a bunch of oftentimes free models. Sometimes you need to pay for them, so it kind of depends on what you're looking for. But I just searched for zombie, and this is what came up. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. And I downloaded this. I downloaded the OBJ file for this asset. And so we'll just, if I search for zombie, I'll show you what I did. Bunch of different zombies. So I found this one because I'm like, all right, this one looks the most most realistic. I guess a realistic zombie, but you know what I mean. A zombie that actually. Oh, there's more down here. A zombie that is actually terrifying. So yeah, download that. I added it to our scene, and it just came in as this untitled asset pack over here, and also untitled entity. I'm going to drag that onto our scene, and then untitled is going to show up like that, but I do want to change the name to zombie. Oops, that's not how you spell that. The request came on Twitter from Ian Massingham, so if you are watching, Ian, I hope you see this. This is just for you. All right, so here's my zombie. I'll zoom in on him. Terrifying sort of, what is he, a Nazi soldier, Soviet soldier of some kind? So he is, there he is. All right, let's move him into our city. He is enormous, an enormous zombie. And let's make him 0.5. Let's do 0.3. 0.1. That's probably more realistic. Okay, there's our zombie. Ian, there you go. We did it. And it really wasn't that difficult. That's really one of the cool things about Sumerian is that you can find all these different assets and then just download them, quickly add them to your scene. If they're FBX or OBJ file formats, you can easily add them to your scene. There are some size restrictions, so just keep that in mind. But there we go. Now we can manipulate this. I don't have any animations on this right now. I'm actually waiting on somebody to give me one. We'll see if that comes up in the next hour or so. All right, so here's my city. Now, we want to make this day and we want to make this night. So we got to think in terms of how is this going to happen? Well, we need to, first of all, shift the light. There's going to be two things involved. We need to shift the lights so that the lights can actually change and make what looks like a nighttime it play out as if it was daytime. So going from morning to evening, so the light changes just like the sun does overhead. And then we also need to change the backgrounds. If we zoom out, this is called section 1. If I unfold this, section 1 is full of a bunch of entities. So these are the actual like props, the roof. Let's go down here. Road props or road models, vehicles, buildings, everything is in here. So it's all contained. There's pluses and minuses to have it all nested into one. So for example, if I select, this is a good example. If I want to pick this building here, if I select that, it automatically defaults to section 1. So it actually selects the whole scene, the whole model, the whole thing. So if I want to find that building, for example, I have to go through and actually find it in here. So again, there's some benefits, but at the same time, if I want to move the whole thing, I can move the whole thing together. So again, there are pluses, and I can take these all out and I can add them to just so they're all separated, but then I have a long list of things. So again, it depends on kind of what you're trying to do within a scene and the pluses and minuses of having them nested in such a way. So, all right, I got a little distracted. All right, so let's back up. All right, so I want to change the lighting to actually rotate. So I want a light to go overhead and as if it was the sun. Can't actually see. My hand is getting out of the camera. So I want the sun to actually go around the scene, from morning to sunset. And then we also need to change the background. So take, for example, these lights. If I take these lights out, all right, the city's dark, but I still have this bright blue sky as a background, as my sky sphere. So I need something to change that. So that means we got to add another sky sphere that is dynamically changing, which is an important thing. Actually, we get a lot of questions from people. How do you make dynamic changing sky spheres and backgrounds? Well, we're going to cover that. All right, so the first thing is let's create something for nighttime, or let's actually worry about the lights. Okay, so I took out the default lights. I didn't take them out, but I just hid them for right now. So we can actually It's a completely dark city at the moment. What I'd like to do is, just to make it visually easy, I'm going to create an entity and I'm going to create a sphere. Now the sphere, because the center of the world is actually not in the center of the city, I do want that to be there. I'm getting lights from somewhere. And I don't know where. See that? There's a light shining on here, and I don't know where that light is. Ah, there it is. Nope. Let's see if I can find it. This is going to be difficult to do if I can't find this light. I thought I turned it off, but I was looking from the wrong direction. Okay. Zombie might have a light somehow in it. Nope. That's not changing anything. I'm going to take out this sphere to see what happens here. Nope, nothing happens there. All right, so I'm really looking for an extra light somewhere. I see it. It's right here. Do we have any other parented entities? Well, that is frustrating. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to delete everything from my scene. Even going to create a new orbit cam and then delete this camera. Okay. What I'm going to have to do is, this is really going to screw me up if I can't get this. Don't know where that light is coming from. All right, well, I'm just going to have to deal with it either way. Okay, so I got the city section in here. It's already added. And have this follow here. Okay. Let's see. It's very interesting. I don't know where this light is coming from. It's really driving me nuts. All right, well, we're just going to have to view it from this side because I cannot find where that light is. I don't know. All right, so going back to what I was doing, we're going to create an entity. We're going to create a sphere. Now, the sphere is not currently in the middle of the city, and I want it to be. So what I need to do is actually place this in the middle of the city. Roughly in the middle of the city. It doesn't need to be exact. Okay, great. Now I want this to be, let's say, 1,000. But the thing is, I don't actually want to see this sphere. So it's a huge sphere right now, okay? But I don't actually want to see this sphere. So I'm going to take the geometry. I just want to make it disappear. Yeah, actually, no, I don't want to do that. We'll just leave it as is for now. We'll leave it as it is for now. All right, then let's add a directional light. Now this directional light can be really anywhere because remember, directional lights don't need their translation or their position within a city doesn't actually make a difference. However, sometimes it helps just to see it visually. So what I want to do is I just want to place it on the edge because I'm going to use these spheres to kind of like be the background of the kind of create the sky for the city. All right. So I'm going to place it right there on the edge because really what I want to do is I want to stick this light and have it rotate up and around. So as I rotate the sphere, rotates the light as well. Now, it's actually pointing in the wrong direction, though. So they're both, the light is pointing in this direction. So here's my issue. I do have a light here that I've been trying to find, and I cannot. And it's shining this direction. It's shining, coming from the opposite side of the city that I'm viewing it from now. So I really just want to keep my camera over here, and that's screwing me up, but it just is what it is. So I want to have the other light shine in the opposite direction so I can see it better. So I need to rotate the light around the y-axis, I believe 180 degrees, and that should, there we go, shine at that direction. So that kind of looks like morning light, and it's shining there. There we go. All right. Now, if I want let's say I want this sphere to be black, like the sky, or the nighttime sky. I'm going to take the material and I'm going to turn the color to black. And let's take some of these specular colors down to black as well. So it's just nice and dark. All right. So my light is there, shining in the middle of the sphere, or from directly horizontally and perpendicularly from the edge of the sphere. Now I want to take this light and I want to add it to the sphere so that when I rotate the sphere, rotates the light. Make sense? So if I go in here, I can do the same thing, and so I start getting this change in light. See that? That's how that works. All right, great. That's what I want. Let's return these rotational values to 0. Now, here's the thing though. So if I'm inside the sphere, I can't see it. I can see outside in, but I can't see inside out, which is what I want because I'm going to be inside the sphere. So simple change to do that is to make this negative 1,000. So that when I'm inside the sphere, now it's dark. If I want to then, so as I rotate it, now we start getting light. That's cool and all, but we still have dark in the background, so we need to change that. Also, there's no ground here, if you notice. I do want the ground to be there. So I want to add something that will make sense. Let's create an entity and just add a disk. And we'll make it -90. And where's my disk? Let's see, I need to find my location here. That's not going to work so much. Let's just make this really big. Let's just make it 10,000. And we'll change the material to be kind of this dark brownish. Okay, good. So it covers it. Let's look at my city again. All right, so now we have the sphere. We're inside using the ground. It kind of acts like the ground, so we can see it from one side but not the other. So this is starting to look like the way I want it to look. If I click on the light, take that back. If I click on the sphere and start rotating again, there we go. Starting to look like day and nighttime changing. All right, great. Now, so there's two things we want to do. We want to make it so the sphere can rotate based on a timeline, so it's just kind of always rotating to mimic daytime shifting from night to mimic the rotation of the Earth or the movement. Obviously, the sun isn't moving, but what appears to be the movement of the sun overhead. So how do we do that? Well, let's create a timeline. So we're going to go create entity, then click timeline. We're going to toggle open the timeline. And I'm going to add my sphere here. Now, I want to return all my values to 0. There we go. However, let's make it, just to make it really easy. Well, that's fine. We'll leave it like that. All right, so timeline, let's go back to this. I've added my timeline. I want to lock in place my rotational values. Let's see, the only one I'm really working on is, what color is that? Really X, I believe. Yeah, so I'm really only messing with the X. So it's the only thing I really need to worry about. So I'm going to add a keyframe to, oops, I didn't mean that, to my X value. And then let's make this 10 seconds, I suppose is fine. So 10 seconds, and then we want to make it so we want it to have the same values at, actually I think we want to make it 360. That's what we want. So it'll be the same. Let's see what this looks like. We'll go loop, then auto start. And we'll press play. Let's see what this looks like now. Outside. I'm going to hide my disk just so I can see this a little bit better. All right, so I'm going to press play, then I'm going to pause it. This is a cool thing about timelines. So you can really test them just by scrubbing the playhead. So there you go. And you can see the light as a starting spot here on the right, and as I rotate it from 0 degrees, should be 0. I don't know why that changed. So it goes from 0 to 360 and back to 0. Getting some interesting stuff here in the X rotational value. But, okay, makes sense. So really, that's all we need to do to make the rotation of the light to produce that sunlight movement. And let's toggle off the timeline. Now let's do something else. So we have a background that works fine for daytime. So we already have this blue sky sphere. That's fine, it works. But now we want to add in the black or the nighttime sky sphere. So I'm actually going to name this, instead of sphere, I'm going to call it night sphere. And really what we want it to do is we want it to be, let's see, do we want it to be off? We don't want it to be off quite yet. Where do we want this timeline to be, right? So think in terms of, if you press play and the light is shining over here directly, well, that means it's like, really we only have the option right now of like blue sky to nighttime. So if the how do we say this? If when we add a state machine, so what we're going to do is add a state machine to essentially fade in the sphere and then fade it out. If the issue is if we start our scene right here, the light is going to be shining from the east, I guess. And if it's shining from the east, what does the sky look like then? Well, not quite sure. It should be sort of opaque, but it should be a little bit transparent so you can see some blue, some light. So to make it easier, let's make it so we're going to start completely dark and then we'll go from there. That'll be kind of a good starting point. So we want to start our scene at nighttime so then we can have the full opacity of our sphere on, so we're not having to worry about like, all right, how much should be transparent and how much blue sky should there be and how much nighttime should there be. So let's go back to the timeline. And really what I want to do is I want to go down really 90 degrees. So let's make this 90 degrees. Okay, and then 360 plus 90 is what? 360 plus 90 is 450. 450. So now we get the full rotation. All right, so now we know exactly our starting point. We know that because it's complete nighttime, it's the middle of the night technically in this scenario. The night sphere should be on full opacity so it appears completely dark. All right, so now let's go back to our night sphere. We're going to add a state machine. We're going to add a new behavior, and we'll just call this day-night behavior. That's fine. All right, so it should be completely off here, right? All right, so let's experiment. We're going to add a tween on. And really all we're going to do is tween opacity, tween material opacity action. So we want it to be 0. Our timeline is 10 seconds. So we really want to add 10,000 milliseconds. And then let's just duplicate this one. And we're going to call this tween off. I'll explain what I'm doing in just a moment. And this one is really just going to be 0. Oops, not the letter O, 0. So when we play it, it'll naturally be on, right? Meaning the sphere will be visible and it will be nighttime. And then it'll take 10 seconds to then completely disappear. And then it'll to go back this way and take 10 seconds to completely turn back on again. So essentially it's taking 10 seconds to fade off and then take 10 seconds to fade on. And so it's just on, off every 10 seconds. So it's just this constant loop, which will be making it gradually become more blue sky and then gradually become more nighttime black sky. Let's press play and just see how it works. So it's rotating the way we want. You can see that. And you can see it's transitioning between night and day. Let's zoom in now to see how it looks. Let's turn our disk back on so we can see that. Obviously, if you wanted to make this a little more realistic, you'd want to add things like a dusk sky and a morning sky and things like that, you know, having a little bit of orange and different colors. But right now we're just working with two just very stark colors, the blue background and the black. There we go. So it works. That's great. Now, let's try something else. All right, so let's make it so I want to click a button. And ECG Taylor, hello, my friend. It's good to see you. Let's make it so we click on one of the entities and it flips. So we can make it turn off and on. How are we going to do that? This is the part I've not rehearsed, so let's just give this a shot. Okay, so first of all, let's add a cone, I guess. I'm going to make this kind of my switch. And let's make it a lot bigger. Let's make it 10. And we'll just put it right here. $90 degrees. All right, so I'm going to add a state machine to this cone. And we're just going to call this the click behavior. And we're just going to call it the wait for click, add action, and then click. So that when I click it, it does something. Let's make it so it emits a message. This is a really common way to do things, where you click something and then it emits a message that other behaviors can listen to and then do something with. So let's just do the emit message now. I know I'm going kind of fast, but the channel message it's going to emit is on. And then we're going to duplicate again, or duplicate the wait for click because we need two of those. And then we're going to duplicate the emit message. Make this clear. Call the state emit on, and then we're going to call this one emit off. Oops, I should have added a transition action to that, and also no transition labels with emit messages. So you do have to add transitions yourself. Okay, so let's just press play. So when I click it, there we go. So clicking the cone, and it is emitting those messages and transitioning. Perfect. All right, so now let's augment the current behaviors we have to respond to this. So instead of tween on, first of all, let's make it 1 second. Let's make it half a second with a quadratic easing type. Making a half a second, so 500 milliseconds with a quadratic out easing time. I'm going to get rid of these transitions. Let's add another state. I like going clockwise. This is going to be started by listening. We're going to add the listen action. and the message we're looking for is on, and then we're going to duplicate this state. And this one's going to be listening for the message off. Okay, so let's see how this works. Oh. We need to make the listen the set as initial state because it automatically turned off really quick. So let's try that again. All right, so you see as I do it, it's quickly, actually those easing types didn't really make sense for a rotation or for a opacity. So you see how I'm turning on and off the background. It's still though, it's still rotating the light really quickly. So now we want to change that to do something else. All right, so what are we going to do? All right, first of all, we need to change the length of the timeline to 0.5. And we got to zoom in because that's the length that we're taking, right? So we want it to be 90, and we want it to turn on. So we're really trying to go from on to off, on to off. So we want to have the light be directly underneath the city to directly on top of the city. So 90 plus 180 is 270. Okay, we are not going to auto start and we're not going to loop it. All right, now we need to add. We're going to close out this timeline. We're going to add a state machine to the timeline to fire it. And this is going to be called the timeline on behavior. And it's going to be listening. And we're going to do the listen action to be on. And we're going to add a state which is this might not work as well as I want it to. I just realized, but we'll see what it does. Let's see. Start timeline, and we're going to look for the start timeline action. Okay, so we're getting some funky behavior, but it's kind of working. We're kind of getting it to work. All right, so we're turning it on and turning it off, but we're getting some weird things with the sphere. It's not quite operating the way we want it to. Okay, so what do we got to do? We're going to duplicate this timeline entity, and we're going to toggle it to be starting position is going to be, what was it, 270? Got to stop. Then, so we want it to, this one, we're creating essentially two different timelines. 270. And then we want this to be 4 420, I think. What is 180 plus 270? I'm looking at my phone because I can't do that. 450. Okay, and then the time on. So we got a few behaviors. We wanted to, when I duplicated the timeline, I created another behavior. All right, so let's see how this works. Then I'll explain what I just did. Okay, cool. All right, it's kind of working. The problem is the night sphere is, we need to switch these actually, because really what it's already on, then we need it to go off, the night sphere. So it's kind of in reverse order. So what I think we really need to do is just go this way with our transitions, because essentially when we start the scene, the sphere is on and then we're clicking it and then it's turning it on again. So that doesn't, we want to turn it off to initiate. And so that's why we got to go this direction, because it's on, we got to go off, then listen, then go on and off. So it was already on and then we clicked it and then it turned it on again. So that just doesn't really make any sense. So now let's press play and see what happens. Perfect. Great. All right, it's working. Now, you might be wondering, let's move this disk down a little bit lower. See some Z fighting there. When two entities are really on the same plane, then you see some Z fighting. I was doing this motion. If you couldn't see, that's what I was doing. Now, let's see what time. Oh, we got about 15 minutes. We'll see if I can get this done in the next 15 minutes. Here's the issue. Well, let me explain what we're doing, or what we have so far. So far, we have a sphere that's a nighttime sphere, so mimicking a nighttime, so it's black. That's what you see in the background here. And on the edge of that, the perimeter of that, is attached a light. And so that when we have two timelines that are rotating it to start in the off position, meaning the light is underneath the city. And then when we turn it on, it rotates up, and then so the light is shining down, so it's like noon, right? And then we have another timeline that moves that sphere to continue the rotation to go all the way off again. So it's just like on and then off again. And the issue is timelines can actually only fire once. Well, they don't. You can change that, but right now I've set it to it only fires once. So that's why I can't keep rotating it, because the timeline is not technically stopped. It ended, but it didn't turn off necessarily. So that's why we got to, there's a few things we need to do to change that a little bit. Okay, so that's why we can't do it again. It's because the timelines can only go one time without adjusting that for that. Does that make sense? Does it make sense what I'm doing? I hope so. So, and then at the same time, I'm having while it's rotating the light, I also need to fade in fade out the opacity of the sphere and then fade it back in. So those two things work together. As the light comes up, the black sky fades away. Then when it turns back down, so the light goes underneath the city and therefore the light disappears, the sphere comes back on to look like it's nighttime. So we got these two things working together. But again, these timeline entities, they only fire once unless you need to stop them. So what we need to do is under timeline, let's go back to the timeline, toggle timeline. Let's go here. I need to stop. So which timeline am I working on? Timeline entity. So this is the one that it goes from on to off. So let's go back to this one. Let's add an event channel. Nope. Let's add an event channel that is we'll call it time on. Okay. And then I'm going to go to my timeline entity 2 and add it also event channel. This one we're going to call time off. This is going to require me to mess around with it just a little bit. Okay, so now I have at the end of each timeline, it's going to emit a message: time on and time off. One says on, one says off. So now the behaviors timeline. So I'm getting myself really confused here. So I need to add another. I'm going to duplicate the state. I'm really just thinking out loud, I know. So now we need it to listen for those messages. So essentially each timeline is going to fire a message to turn then on and off the other timeline. That's what we're going to do here. So let's add an action transition. Time on. And we need an action that will turn off the timeline. Because that's the issue. It doesn't actually turn off. We have to turn off the timeline so we can then turn it back on or start it again. All right, let's see if this works. Here we go, here we go, here we go. What are we going to get? The issue is when you have on, off, two different timelines and the labels are really similar, it's hard to tell which is which. Okay, so this one is listening to time on, this one's listening to time off. I might have the messages switched. So I'll have to kind of new state, and then stop. And then stop timeline. Then transition. I also think, I think this one is, okay, both are not set to loop. Okay, so it's working. I just think I have it backwards. So if you notice what happened here, so right now it's daytime because of the blue sky, but the lights are off. Then I click it again, lights are on, nighttime sky. So we got it reversed. I think the only thing I need to do now is actually change the message that's actually listening to. I think. Let's see if that works. Seems to work. There we go. So all I did was just really, those messages were backwards, so they were not quite functioning correctly. All right, so remember I have that the extra light over there that is just, there we go. So all right, so it's dark, it's nighttime. Click on my cone. And it seems to work. I'm going to bring this cone way over here because I just... Remember, the cone is just to something to click on to emit messages. Day, night. Day, night. I can also, you see how like the horizon is way out here for the day and then it's a lot closer for the night. That's because my night sphere just isn't all that big. So maybe let's just make it 10,000. Maybe that's just too big. Maybe that doesn't work. So let's just not make it 10,000. Let's make it 5,000. Oops, 5,000. Negative 5,000. It's still, oops, that didn't make sense either. I think you're right, Taylor. It's the camera clipping plane. Yes, good call. So really we need this to be 5, maybe 10,000? There we go. It's a little bit closer. I mean, see, the horizon isn't quite the same, but that's something that could be adjusted. Okay, there we go. Let's see. Now we don't have that extra light. That is really interesting. I don't know why that's happening. All right, so there's two ways to do it. You can just have it on a constant rotation, so it automatically is just rotating like it would, or you can control it if you want with a switch, which is what we did here. To reiterate what we just did, we have a few different behaviors. One, we just have a click behavior that is emitting a message on and off, right? The day and night behavior is then listening to that message to turn on the nighttime sky and then turn off the nighttime sky. The blue sky is just staying, it's not moving. It's just turning on the night, turning off the night as you click this. That's what's happening. You can see it going there. And it's happening quickly, it's happening in half a second. The timelines then, they're just very short. They're half seconds because, again, we're turning the sky, or the background, the sky sphere is being changing from, the opacity is half a second. So we want to coordinate the movement of the light, the rotation of the light, to also be 1 second. And we're starting from underneath the city to up on top of the city. And each time that it ends, every time that it ends, it emits a message that then allows it to turn on and off each other. So that's the way we have a timeline on, a timeline off. One will turn on the light, and then the other will then rotate down underneath. And each time they complete their timeline, they emit a message to turn off the other timeline so that it can be then reinitiated based on the clicking the cone. So that's what we have, these emit messages. That may have not been too clear. If you have any questions, please hit me up and I can explain further if I didn't explain that right off the bat really quickly, because I didn't think of having to do that. That was a little bit unrehearsed. So thanks for joining, especially ECG Taylor, my man. It's good seeing you in Chicago last week. We'll be back again. I know I've missed a couple weeks here and there. Just there's just some things for traveling and other stuff we got to do, but try to stay consistent. The next week we're gonna look at some other things involving the city and get moving around and adding some more experiences within the city. So I hope you join us. Hope you enjoy this. And if you have any questions, make sure you are. Where is that? Oops, I'm trying to get my slide up here. If you have any questions, make sure you hit us up on Slack. Also, you can go to my Twitter, which is right here, Jake Smeester, handle just Jake Smeester. Chris Chan, so are you recreating the Truman Show? Yes, you could. You could. That's a very good point. That's what I feel like sometimes I'm doing with this, especially when you start like zooming out and you're like, God, this does look like the Truman Show. Yes, great question. All right, we'll be back next week. I think we're actually going to I might be trying to move to Thursdays instead of Wednesdays. May make it a little bit easier. If you have any thoughts on that, let me know. Best times for you all. I want to accommodate. I didn't actually show what I was doing. I was just zooming out. That's all I was doing. All right, again, throw up the slide. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.